we look at the magic wands of Negi and of Frieren.
This is the Kitsune-Klan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
This is part 2 of War of the Wizards, so a series in which we look for the equipment of wizards and related characters and how this equipment could be used for fighting if they cannot use magic. This time we will look at 2 different characters that both use magic wands, and magic wands can of course be used also for fighting. First up we have the staff of Frieren, the now relatively famous elfen mage. Why? Because you can get the magic wand of Frieren for rather low money on Amazon and similar platforms. The shaft is usually harder plastic, but the tip contains PU foam or EVA foam and is therefore soft enough to be clashed against other cosplay weapons. The version that I have here is a bit tricky. The head is not very well fixed to the pole, so I had to come up with an idea. I used a simply bamboo core, filled it up also with a lot of hot glue and some other stuff to have a fixed connection between the head and the shaft. After doing so, the magic wand is nice to swing around, but it's really heavy. I've seen different versions. In the version that I have here, the magic stone in the head is a rather massive piece and therefore it also weighs quite a lot. So what this magic wand is a massive club. So in principle, you have to be a bit careful with this thing because it has a lot of inertia. That makes it also a usable weapon. Although, if we look at it in fighting against a sword, the most advantage you can get from a stick type weapon is speed. That's what you see, for example, in Jojitsu. With the very heavy head of the staff, it's not as fast as it could be. And whenever you get a bit slowed down, the person with the sword can simply grab the staff or wand and then attack with the sword. On the other hand, you can really knock the sword away and then attack the person with the heavy head. The head has also an interesting shape, and sometimes it's possible to really catch a sword with this head and fix it. And then it's also possible to disarm the sword. In principle, this is also possible, for example, with a spear, but we cannot show you that, at least not yet. Wait a bit for this next point. I already made here comparisons to Jojitsu, and of course, if you look at the length of the magic wand of Frieren, the Jo is the most comparable length. And that means everything you can do with the Jo, you can to a certain degree also do with this staff. So this includes actions that would redirect the incoming force of the attack of the opponent. You can entangle it, disarm, you can in principle do arm bars and throwing techniques and whatever. So this is a type of orientation that martial arts can give us with this type of equipment, meaning for Frieren we should envisage something like Jojitsu, which is usually tied to many different Aikido or Jujitsu styles in footwork, and I think especially Aikido would fit also the character in the story. As we did it in other cases, other videos of this series are linked in the description box and also a playlist. We not only want to see how the weapon behaves against a sword, but also against other weapons. Let's start out with an axe. The advantage in comparison to the sword is the disadvantage of the staff. The unbalancedness due to the heavy head also applies to the axe, and therefore this is a bit easier for the magic wand. Downside is the two weapons often entangle in each other and make a not so funny exchange of blows here. Even more problematic if you use the axe, as you can do it, to stop the incoming attack. That can be pretty detrimental for the magic wand. At least ours broke while doing so. And it basically broke the socket with which the head was attached to the pole. So it did not break at one of the seams where I glued it. It really broke through. Interestingly, you can still make use of the remaining parts. So the head can still be used to trap an incoming weapon and then disarm. And the pole can still be used to strike the opponent to protect yourself, because it's still like a Joe and there are some one-handed Joe techniques. And all this can nicely perform, for example, against a spear carried by an attacker. As we broke this staff or magic wand, we have to change to the next one. And this one has a similar length and it's also a manga / anime character. It's the magic wand of Negi from Negimagi or Negima or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or whatever you take there. This one we did not find in a normal shop. We built it already something like 10 years ago when our son was still small and wanted to cosplay as Negi. So this thing here is made out of a bit of wood and a bit of cardboard and a lot of tape. It still is possible to swing it around and strike with it against cosplay weapons. If you look at the head of this weapon, it looks formidable. It basically resembles some special types of naginata or also some European polearms, and you have the impression that you could cut with this. Of course, original storyline, it's not really a sharp thing, but it still means there's an edge with which you can strike. Also, the shape allows to drag or draw on your opponent. So simply pulling either the weapon down or even pulling body parts of the opponent towards you. And on the other side, you can also push, which makes a lot of sense. For example, when you fight against pole arms, you can make space by pushing away the pole arm. This gives us quite some possibilities with this weapon. Also, it's much better balanced than was Frieren's magic wand, and so this also moves much more naturally, and indeed it's very similar to the use of a Joe or a short halberd. Of course, it still struggles in many situations. Yes, you can defend with a Joe against a sword, but I would prefer to have a sword, and I think most people would that. Same goes for the spear. The magic wand of Negi is not bad because you can push the spear away, but it's still short in comparison to the spear, and it can simply not cut. That's definitely a disadvantage. So if we compare these staffs or magic wands, or however you want to call them, to the one we had already, so Gandalf's magic wand, Frieren's staff is a bit more similar to Gandalf's wands in the sense of that they are both long clubs, but the one from Gandalf was even longer and the one from Frieren is more head heavy, which can be an advantage but often will be a disadvantage. On the other hand, the head of the Frieren staff, magic wand / whatever you want to call it, had some interesting function that you can really entangle a sword, catch a sword. You can do that to a certain degree with the magic wand of Negi, but not as good. But the balancing of this one is definitely better. So for my personal taste, what I see here, if I have the choice of these three, I would probably take Negi's magic wand as the best one, which doesn't mean he has the best equipment, because Gandalf had his magic wand and a proper sword. That's missing for Negi. If you take the entire universe, of course, there are swords available. Especially interesting, of course, would be the one that Negi's clone later on has, where you can change the weight. But that is again kind of magic, although it's high technology, and we would have to subtract that from our comparison. Overall, we can see magic wands are useful tools, and every wizard with a relatively large magic wand, so here, for example, Joe size, will be able to fight with this, and this gives a good starting point, but it also means we don't have to look at all these wizards, because most of the difference will of course be that some of the head shapes are more interesting and some of the head shapes of the weapons are less interesting. Still, this brings us now to 3 wizards that we have already analyzed. We will do more of these in the near future. Hope we could inspire you with this and hope to see you around next time.